Good afternoon, everyone, or late morning for those who are on the West Coast, or very, very early morning for you if you are somewhere near Australia today. No matter where you are, we are thrilled to have you with us. We at Black Hills IP are really excited to be starting a brand new set of webinars today, the Renewals Excellence Series. My name is Justin Bruin. I'm joined today by Mr. Tom Marlowe. Before I pass you along to Tom, I wanted to remind the audience that any questions you have for Tom can be asked in the GoToWebinar control panel. We will get to those questions at the end of the presentation. And make sure you stick with us till the end. We have a pretty stellar free offer for those of you who joined us today, and we're excited to tell you about that towards the end. Tom, I'll go ahead and turn the rest to you. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
All right, thanks, Justin, and thanks everybody for joining. So, like Justin said, I'm Thomas Marlowe. I'm currently the CTO with Black Hills IP and also president of our renewals company. So, annuities are near and dear to me. I am a patent attorney, worked in private practice, advising clients, writing patents. I've been a client as a corporate in-house IP head, and now spend my time in the services and technology side of the industry. During my in-house time, annuities were always a pain point. They seem so innocuous, so simple, but the costs really add up in a portfolio, and the timelines are pretty strict. You don't want to let these things slip, and there's often more information that you need than is generally available to make good decisions. Well, okay, so really having established that annuities are an item not to be ignored, and I imagine you all wouldn't be here if they were, let's take a look at annuities from the law firm perspective, which is the topic of this webinar. So the law firm's in a great position to help influence good annuity management with the client. It's simple. As the patent attorney, the client is looking for the firm's guidance, advice. There is, not surprisingly though, no real cookie cutter solution. There are a handful of basic ways to deal with the topic of annuities with clients though, and these can vary in the terms of involvement that's needed or wanted, along with the capabilities, resource, and knowledge of those involved. So like I mentioned, there's no single right methodology here, and there's several factors that can determine what arrangement is ideal for a particular firm-client relationship. So let's dig into what some of these options can look like. I like to visualize them from an active management perspective on one end to a more passive on the other end in terms of firm involvement. So on the active end of things, we've got management. So as the attorney or annuity manager, I'm going to handle communicating reminders, chasing down the client, discussing options, and advising on decisions, right? So I may do the payments internally at the firm, provided resources are available, or I might actually work with an annuity provider to get those dates and those calculations. And then when the client gives instructions, I'm going to handle the payment and invoice out to the client. Kind of a quick overview of the management side of things. So as we move further over, we get to oversight. Here again, as the attorney or annuity manager, I'm gonna take a step back. So I'm gonna set the client up with a trusted annuity provider and basically keep an eye on the client's deadlines and decisions. So here I want to have a good relationship because I'm going to work with the annuity provider, maybe have access to the client's portfolios, and I can provide advice, make decisions, or do things kind of on demand as the client needs them to be done or requests them to be done. All right, moving a little bit further over towards the passive end, we get what I'm calling escalation mode. So in this arrangement, I may or may not have or even need access to an annuity system, but I'm going to maintain a relationship with whatever annuity provider is in the mix. And this is so that items can be escalated to me, or so that I can provide advice or deal with issues where critical deadlines come up or the client is unresponsive, since I still maintain that good relationship with the client as the attorney. And then the final end of this, on the very passive end, is what we call hands-off. And this is fairly self-explanatory. And here I'm going to point the client to a trusted annuity provider and let them manage the relationship. And of course, even though I, as the attorney, am not involved, this is an important recommendation that I'm going to put a lot of weight in because it may reflect back on me. So I want to feel good about that provider that the client is being referred to. So if we dig in first to the management side of things, I think it's worth taking a moment to think about the upshot of annuity management is that it really does have the potential for simplicity. That's not to say that performing annuity calculations and processing payments is simple. It's actually pretty complex, but the analysis is straightforward. Once all the complicated number crunching is done and the costs are known and the dates are known, it's just a matter of looking at it, and taking a look at those dates and deadlines. And then it's even better if you can do this along with some data that will actually help drive some of the decisions. So diving into the management side of things, as a law firm or as an attorney at a law firm or as an annuity manager at a law firm, the things that I'm going to be focused on from a management perspective lie around coming up with the annuity calculations, really understanding country law. That means the dates, the amounts, the grace period calculations, the effective entity sizes, and all the other kind of weirdness that exists in various jurisdictions around the world. For example, how many independent claims are in that Vietnamese patent? It affects the cost of the annuity. Or do you have the grant date or the grant publication date in your system for that Japanese matter? They're different. Do you know which one is used to calculate the annuities? And then reminders, and more reminders, staying on top of the clients. And I can tell from experience, responsiveness is not always a given. So staying on top of these reminders to make sure that you get the data that's necessary, the instructions that are necessary to make sure that patents don't go abandoned, which we all want to avoid. Foreign agents, they can be a useful resource here when managing annuities inside a firm. They can definitely be leveraged to get payments covered, but you really have to have a good relationship and know who they are. For example, on that recent EP validation family that you've just dealt with, who is it that's going to be paying the Luxembourg annuity? Sometimes there's not a direct relationship there. Maybe it's through the EP attorney that you were working with. So it's important to really understand who it is that's necessary to use to get all those annuities paid. And then invoicing. This is an important topic to consider, and it's really easily overlooked. Many corporate in-house departments put annuities on a single line item, a separate line from prosecution costs in their budgets. And I really do want to make sure we spend a minute here. When working with a client, it's helpful to know how they manage and organize their budget internally. If annuities, like I mentioned, are a separate line item, which is common, how does that affect billing practice? For an in-house group, convenience is often as important as cost when it comes to internal time being factored in. As a firm, keeping these considerations in mind will help keep happy clients who ultimately send more work. So even in a full management scenario, like we're talking about here, you can still leverage an annuity provider or an annuity system to do a lot of the kind of detailed number crunching for you, which then allows you to focus on the advice and the value add that you're going to bring to the table and still look like a full provider to the client. Okay, so from management, we move to the next step over to what we call oversight. So in oversight, where this is a little bit less active, it's all about process. So we're talking about reviewing reminders. We're talking about checking in with the client, nudging them when needed. Some of the key factors to doing this are going to really include understanding the implications of going into grace periods, what this means for the client, what's the impact for them, understanding the opportunities afforded by abandonments, and then really understanding the client. So understanding their internal process, budget constraints, key technologies, and those types of things in order to be able to provide useful advice. So you kind of get the focus here is on strategic advice from an oversight perspective. So you know exactly how you want to be overseeing these things for the client and when to inject some advice into the process. So to summarize these two that are on the active end, the key in both instances is really good knowledge of the client in order to provide the advice, because you're there as the trusted advisor. And then with the management option, you add in the fact that the client is leaning on you for that annuity expertise. So it's important that you really feel comfortable with your internal abilities and resources with respect to the management condition. Okay, so let's take a look now at the escalation side of things. In an escalation environment, you really have this, what I like to think of as more of a push system rather than a pull system. So the client or the annuity provider are the ones that are going to be pushing questions, issues to you rather than you having to pull that information, instructions, responses from the client. So it's kind of a sit back and wait for things to happen type of scenario. The client can reach out when they have questions, need some advice, don't know what to do next. The annuity service can escalate issues with respect to, say, non-responsiveness or really impending critical deadlines where it might be helpful to bring the attorney or the firm annuity support into the picture to help things out. The hands-off approach, which is the most passive of the four options that we're looking at, in some cases, this comes by default. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we're talking about here, where you've got a third party and an annuity provider in the mix, and you don't have to deal with it. That means not dealing with the liability. That means not dealing with the reminders. And like I mentioned, in some cases, this comes by default, especially with big clients, with internal departments who are savvy on annuity management. In other cases, this is useful, like I mentioned, to avoid conflicts. Perhaps you have a small portfolio for a client that's fully completed prosecution, and the firm doesn't want or need to keep the relationship in place when there's just annuities floating out there. Transitioning the client to an annuity provider to get the conflict off the books, while knowing that they're still going to be well handled with the annuity provider, is a useful scenario. And really the key here lies in the transition. The transition is where this is either going to be really successful or there's going to be problems. And that comes down to communication with the client and with the annuity provider that's going to be used, and the setup in the forward-moving process. So communicating with the client, communicating with the annuity provider, and getting understanding of, one, being clear that the interactions going forward are going to be between the client and the annuity provider. Two, that the invoicing is going to go that direction as well. And then three, ongoing updating of the client portfolio. Who's going to manage that? Is that something that the firm is going to still be sending data out of the docketing system, or if this is a truly hands-off scenario, if there is any new development on the client side, making it clear that it's their responsibility to update the annuity provider. And clarity in this communication and a really good, clear understanding of what the ongoing relationship looks like is important to making a successful hands-off type of arrangement. So in both of these passive circumstances, escalation and hands-off, we have a situation where the attorney or the annuity manager is really going to be leveraging the expertise and kind of trusted relationship with the annuity service provider, and also relying on them to drive the process. So essentially, the process side of things, you're offloading to the annuity service provider, which can be really nice. The key becomes communication after that. Communication concerning the relationship in the case of a hands-off engagement, and a simple, clear communication to allow an escalation in that case to be processed quickly and smoothly. So that kind of covers your options from active to passive. And then, so once you've got an idea of how these things work, the key becomes determining the fit. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the right fit, not just for the client, but also taking into consideration the firm's resources, priorities, and capabilities. So it's a two-sided fit that you want to look at. So let's take a look at a few examples, and I'm going to generalize a bit, but I'll give you an idea of how to make things fit. So if we take a look on the more active side of things, the management solution fits well for small and growing type clients with law firms that have robust internal capabilities and law firms that are wanting to be that integrated advisor with a client. Moving a little bit more passive, the oversight solution, again, is good for those firms wanting to be an integrated advisor, but without necessarily wanting to have detailed annuity expertise. So then you pair that with clients who still need that kind of attorney level handholding, and you get a good fit within oversight. When it comes to the escalation solution, this allows a firm to focus on its core capabilities, which may be a firm that's really going to be focused on drafting and prosecution, and related strategy. And then having a client match that is maybe has a more complex global portfolio, where determining those annuities, dates, and calculations is going to be more burden than the law firm wants to have to deal with. So global spread with a prosecution-focused firm for escalation. And finally, the hands-off approach really works well for a firm who wants to avoid annuity work or the ongoing relationships which create long-term conflicts. We see that a lot. Here we see either small companies with completed prosecution portfolios, or on the other end of the spectrum, kind of large clients with resources to manage those annuities in-house. So like I mentioned, these are generalizations, but they really should help set the stage for a valuable conversation with a new client and with a potential annuity service provider to make sure that they can support the options that you might want to leverage as a law firm. So that gives kind of a quick overview of some of the ins and outs of how to manage annuities from a law firm perspective, all the way from the passive up to the more active end of things. And I think it is important to mention here. I do run an annuity management company, so I would be remiss not to mention that. And if anyone would like to see or discuss our capabilities, please feel free to reach out. If you type "I want one" in the chat window for the webinar, we'll reach out to you and send you a gift as well. And Justin, what is that gift?
I'm so glad you asked, Tom. Today we are offering a complimentary, state-of-the-art, dazzling, one-of-a-kind, famous inventor bobblehead from Black Hills IP. The bobblehead will be chosen at random, but may include famous names such as Nikola Tesla, Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison, Marie Curie, Rosalind Franklin, and as you can see from the photo, the main mathematician man himself, Mr. Albert Einstein. Pretty great company to keep in an office, a living room, perhaps a bedroom. I would go so far to say as you could possibly put it in your vehicle dashboard, although I don't believe that qualifies you for the carpool lane, but I could be wrong. Like Tom said, all you need to do is type "I want one" into the chat now. I will reach out to you after the email and send you a calendar link, get you set up for a free 15 to 30-minute demo with Tom and I, and we can get that bobblehead shipped off to you.
All right. Oh, and I see one question here, and it is, what do you do if you are representing a client that has a portfolio of patents that aren't all managed with your firm? This is actually a really good question, because it happens a lot, where a client comes along and they have some of their portfolio managed with your firm, some with potentially another firm that's out there. And well, first, if they already have an annuity solution, well, then that's pretty much taken care of. But if they don't, you've got the opportunity here to be that advisor for the client, to help them consolidate their annuity decisions. So one of the things that I always stress when it comes to annuity management is it's one of the cases where it's really useful to see all of your annuities, or all of the decisions that you have to make in one place, for two reasons. One is sometimes it's helpful to see decisions that are made on other patents when making the decisions on a certain patent where an instruction is due. And two, like I mentioned, since annuities is usually a single line item on a budget, it's helpful to have that all consolidated together. So if you need to manage that budget, if you need to cut it down, or really get a better understanding of what that looks like for projections for future years, you can do that all in one place. So to get to the question, if you've got a client who you manage a portion of their portfolio, you can recommend an annuity provider, or you can recommend helping manage the annuity decisions for the entire portfolio through an annuity provider to be able to give them that kind of holistic view. All right, and I think that covers all the questions that we have. Thank you, everybody, for your time and for joining us today. And as always, if there's any particular topics that you're interested in seeing in the future, you can shoot us a line in the chat or send us an email. And that'll do it for today. Thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.